old habitual tendencies. And the initial verse, the Buddha taught patience to enable us to be free from anger. So patience is the antidote to anger. He taught diligence to enable us to replete with all merits and virtues. So this is about the efforts that we put in, the ceaseless efforts to put in for us to grow in virtues. He taught samadhi to enable us to put a stop to discursive thinking. Discursive thinking and frivolous thinking. These are the unwholesome thoughts that we have. And if you recall some time back, Master spoke about one of the ways to address the unwholesome thoughts are the four right efforts. And he thought wisdom enables us to let go of all afflictions. So ultimately, what happened is that in wisdom, when we let go of all afflictions, we'll be in a non-retreating practice. Obviously, all these four are the last four of the 6 parameters. So you can see that what Master has been doing from the past few lessons before the Lunar New Year, and Master has been talking a lot about the Four Noble Truth. And obviously, in addition to that, there were references being made to the 12 cyclic existence. And now she is been speaking from yesterday and before that on the 6 parameters. So in Master's explanation, in our mind, there is so much ignorance that thus like afflictions of ignorance are too numerous to be counted. We can broadly categorize them into 3 major categories, which is great anger and ignorance. And why is it called dust-like affliction? Dust-like because we do not see that as a major issue. So see, cause afflictions are easy to deal with. And dust-like afflictions are usually not well noticed by ourselves. But they tend to be very much noticed by your spouse. So that's the reason why if you want to learn how to eliminate dust-like affliction, listen to the person closest to you. So in anger, we may lose our temper for no reason at all. And so the Buddha began teaching about patience. So we must remain patient in the face of great anger and ignorance. Now, so I just mentioned that, and this always happens, when I listen to some of the sharing by our Dharma brothers and sisters. I'm not necessarily in Tzu Chi, but I mean, obviously, I've been in the path for decades now, and you can hear about relationship issues. And you know what, a lot of these relationship issues arises from not being able to take feedback about their own dust-like afflictions. So they get very impatient and get very agitated as a result of which. And so they lose a temper. And that's why we get very afflictive relationships between the spouses. So the Buddha also taught diligence. This is not enough to just master patience. We will cease doing the wrong things and we will accumulate many blessed causes and conditions. So therefore, if you can gradually slowly come down these levels of training in the parameters, and so when we've been told about dust-like affliction, we don't like it, then we get impatient and lose anger. So then we stop our practice at this level and not even applying diligence. So we need to accept that, and then we how to cultivate with patience. Then with diligence, we learn to eliminate the whatever dust-like afflictions that we have. So then, and to do this, and then we go on to further, I said the Buddha taught samadhi to enable us to put a stop to discursive thinking by practicing contemplation. So once we are doing all these things, we're in samadhi, we embrace what have been done to us to correct ourselves with great efforts, and be in stillness, so that we do not have any carelessness in our thinking and our thoughts, and or any unwholesome thought that may arise from that. So once we have eliminated our affliction, naturally our minds will not become scattered. And this is wisdom. And this is about part about wisdom learning. So you can understand why every time that I share with you, I always end up with one contemplation of relationship, and can understand why relationship is so important. And this is not a joke, okay? Your spouse is the greatest coach for you to practice. When I share this, I get a lot of people bombarded me with a lot of sometimes unsavory remarks when I mention about this. But if you think and contemplate on this very carefully, you'll find that they seriously, you know, spouses all come together for a good reason. Okay, so appreciate your spouse, and the more they criticize you, that means the greater you are as a bodhisattva in training. Okay, so their hindrances are limited capabilities. They crave for glory and always for things that are impermanent and ephemeral. Ephemeral, very temporary. They're deeply attached to craving and desire. So when we have very limited capabilities, right? And so, like Sister Suisan said, we embrace accolades, but we do not like criticism. And these two actually are one of the two. These two are two of the 8 worldly winds. We like praise. We don't like to be blamed, and we like fame and do not like shame. But then, if one understands that in the practice, and that's the reason why in the practice we need to be equanimous. When one is equanimous, one doesn't just embrace an accolades. Neither will one be afflicted by the criticism or the blame that is being thrown at us. And to practice this, you need all these 6 parameters in samadhi and understand the wisdom behind that. So in habitual tendencies, many do not realize the impermanence of life. And they have not realized that life is filled with suffering. And because of this, we cling on, especially when life is pleasurable and with everything that they want. And they will indulge in the pleasures as if there's no tomorrow. And that's literally what it means, as if there's no tomorrow and there's no impermanence of life. But they do not understand this is a serious hindrance that prevents them from accepting the great Dharma. So really pursuits of recognition, wealth, and status, and constant manipulation to attain this truly bring about suffering. So, and what Master always say, when you got one, you want 9. And so what did you? We manipulate others. When manipulate others so that they can produce more for us, right? So this is all these are worldly pursuits without no end. There's no end to this. Where is there an end of wealth? The only way there's an end to wealth is when you're contented. One who has a little bit of money is contented and is more wealthy than one who's a billionaire, because that person is not contented. So by giving to others, we can attain blessings, and we are willing to do it. But when it comes to yielding to others or holding my temper, simply cannot do it. So, and you remember some time back, I did share with you, and when we are in practice, it's easy to give, right? So giving, we donate what we have. But yielding to others, that's not so simple. Because, see, given what we have access, we can give. But yielding to others, to concede to others, and therefore, why? Because of the ego. We cannot yield to others because of the ego, and the ego will stand in front of you, and that is the biggest hindrance to be able to do that. And how do you address that hindrance? Is to subdue yourself. And there's a reason why in the practice of the nobility of the mind, one have to be humble, it to be gentle, but simple. The more complicated that you are, and the more you cling on to your position and the power and things like that, you will not yield to others. So people are attached to craving, and these are craving and desire. Therefore, they could not free themselves from suffering and afflictions. So in greed for temporary pleasures, the mystic suffering for joy. And the suffering for joy, and this is the temporary pleasure, this is the lacking in mindfulness so much that sometimes we understand the Dharma, but we are not practicing mindfully. Mindful, and remember there are four mindfulness in the practice, and the second mindfulness is that feeling is suffering. But very often, in the way we indulge in worldly pleasure, feeling is pleasurable and it's worldly happiness. I'll explain to you that worldly happiness is a moment between true unhappiness. And so therefore, and we do not recognize those moments of pleasures are temporary. But at the end of the day, they are actually suffering. So when that's like ignorance, desire, and affliction, you'll never have peace or joy. And that's relating to what it is, because we do not know that we're indulging in all these worldly pleasures. And that at the end of the day will lead to suffering, because at the end of the day, whatever you like, whatever pleasure that you have to depart from that. So when you have to depart from what you love and what you like, what you long for, isn't that suffering? So the many habitual tendencies of former lives like we accumulated in the past life, we do not know. And all this that what we have in this life, whether good or evil, and it's our karmic retribution. So if we was excellent at cultivating goodness in the past, and then in this present life, we grow stronger tendency toward goodness. So those, so if we don't need to be clairvoyant, we don't need to be fortune tellers. So, but we understand this part of it, that if you want to have a good life, good future life, that we need to be continue to be in practice. So we need to cultivate goodness. Stop doing evil, do only good. But those whom evil times are those who have stronger tendency towards evil. These are the fruits of habitual tendencies. So therefore, how you want to see what your future life is going to be, look at your present life. So the lessons learned is this: in the past, we developed good habitual tendencies as well as some negative habitual tendencies. Therefore, our past lives, we have unceasing accumulate positive and negative habitual tendencies, and we brought them into the present life. So now that we learn the Dharma, we now learn how to correct ourselves. But correct ourselves, we need to understand ourselves. We need to know ourselves. So when we are born in this lifetime, we have many negative habitual tendencies. With good habitual tendencies manifest, we can draw near the Buddha Dharma. But our negative habitual tendencies are still there. They're still there. But the fact that you know the Dharma, we want to apply that in practice. We got to eliminate these negative habitual tendencies. It's not easy, but this is where the practice of mindfulness and awareness is important. So we must fix our habitual tendencies and change our ways. What is it that we are changing? So the purpose of life, if the purpose of your life is to grow in a practice that ultimately when attain enlightenment, we got to start changing our ways. So therefore, for me, as you all know, I've shared with you all in the past that the purpose of my life is to change my character. Right? Changing our habitual tendencies is what we call spiritual practice. And this is what whole practice is about, is to change ourselves. Without changing ourselves, we can never progress. Therefore, this is a lifetime goal for us. So to do that, we need to practice with patience, diligence, and efforts to change what comes to us, and then we can practice it in equanimity, and then we can grow in wisdom learning. If you're not in samadhi and your mind is disturbed all the time, where is there one? How can one then discern in the wisdom that come to us? So in contemplation, when you advance in your practice, you will face the tougher tests on your defilements and habitual tendencies. It has to be, because if you want to advance, you have to go into more minute dust of affliction, and you'll face a tougher test, because unless a test are rated tough on you, the small affliction will never be noticed. That will challenge the virtues that you have been practicing. So can you uphold those virtues when all this big test comes to you? Sometimes we may lose our anger. As well as our vows and commitments as part of an unfoldment of your life becomings. And not much that we uphold. That's why the vows that we have aspirational vows. And then we must uphold that all the time, not only in this lifetime, but into the future. And in this lifetime, got to uphold them with commitments. And whatever life becomes that come to us, we still need to uphold those precepts and vows of practice. The tests can be subtle and do not necessarily appear obvious. And sometimes, the test could be in the form of pleasure. And this is the reason why we need to be aware. When pleasure comes to you, how can pleasure come to you? What happens if someone of great power comes to you and give you high positions? The greater is the subtlety, the greater is the tests. And that's why we need to be very mindful and aware of ourselves, as the challenge is on your elevated consciousness, as well as your skillful means. And this is why we need to be so conscious to a higher level that goes beyond the mind for us to practice skillfully. So on relationships, sometimes the relationships that we have, and we do not know this, and this is the what you call the illusion in a relationship. The thoughts are different because the minds of people are different, and because that's why we have differences with people, right? Because our thoughts are different, and the minds of people are different because they see thoughts come from the mind. So they are different because the minds of people are different, because the habitual tendencies of people are different. And the habitual tendencies are different because the karmic imprint of one differs from others. My karmic imprint that comes to my life is different from my home sister, it's different from my colleagues. So the truth of reality is emptiness. The phenomena is without self. So when we understand the truth of reality is emptiness, what we see that is happening in a relationship, and if the reality is emptiness, but they are conditional, that's why there is conditioned practice and unconditioned practice. The phenomenon is without self. So therefore, the self that gives the phenomena is the manifestation of the one's mind. So then one's mind, the manifestation that become the externality of condition. Mental formation will come in. So all these are the mental affliction, whether it's greed, anger, or delusion. So therefore, all phenomena, and we understand the truth of that, is actually illusory. All right, Gan En brothers and sisters, thank you.
醉了，BrotherChin. Another wonderful session. Yeah, great sharing. Wonderful Dharma. And then so much, brother.